Good morning. It is I, your Uncle Ringo, here to talk to you about the possibility that maybe I am overreacting. Joke's on you. I, and yourself, are probably underreacting. Now, why do I say that? Well, since Charlie Kirk's death, there's been a rise in violence directed at the minority groups in this country and the political opponents of the people who run this country. We had two men lynched in Mississippi. Trump put out that if you are anti American, anti Christian, anti this, and anti that, and a few other things, then you are now a problem for America. A South Carolina judge's house was set on fire. And ICE recently used Blackhawks to go ahead and break down and enter an apartment building to remove every single person, whether they were clothed or not, adults or not. And they left them zip tied on the street for hours at a time until they found out a lot of them were Americans. You may have heard of Alligator Alcatraz, a really fucking shitty fucking name to go ahead and label something. Had something like 1,200 people, and something like 2/3 of them are gone. Nobody knows where they're at. Seems kind of concentration campy. Kind of reminds me of fascist regime. To add in, we heard Pam Bondi go on CNN or Fox or somewhere like that and put out a bunch of bullshit about ICE being doxxed and hunted, as if they're not doxing and hunting Americans and human beings that live in this country. Trump said, "We have taken away the freedom of speech" in a conversation about burning the flag. Excuse me. And Stephen Shortstop Miller, the piece of shit that he is, said Trump had absolute or plenary, meaning absolute, power on CNN. And then CNN cut that out of their out of the recording. But before I ramble far too much on these aspects, let's discuss something here. What is fascism? Easy enough. You can Google it if you don't believe what I'm going to say here. Okay? So, fascism is an easy term to go ahead and throw around, like Nazism, racism, and so many others that we use for labels. So we define it so that we can go ahead and label a fascist, a Nazi, racist, a racist, and an idiot, an idiot. Fascism aims to go ahead and push nationalism similar to what we see in the MAGA movement. Growing up, it was a major aspect of the culture here in America. You say the Pledge of Allegiance, you respect the flag, you respect the troops, you respect the country, follow the rules and you won't end up in prison, so on and so forth. Now, my childhood doesn't mean that fascism was here. It may have been. I wasn't smart enough to go ahead and do self-reflection nor look at a bigger project like the country the size of America 20 years ago. And even today, you could argue that I'm not the person to go ahead and talk about this. If so, you can always click off and not listen to me talk. This is, in fact, my channel, not yours. This aspect of respecting the country probably led to a lot of people being nationalized to go ahead and think that America was the best country out there. And a lot of Americans have that mentality. In fact, a lot of Americans like to go ahead and say that America is the best country, even as we complain about the work hours, the bad pay, healthcare, infrastructure, cars, and so many other issues. While we go ahead and supply Israel with billions of dollars, and they're not the only ones. We just bailed out Argentina for $20 billion. But going back to Israel, we subsidize their healthcare, their schooling, their housing, and their children. And while we're supplying Israel with those billions of dollars, we kill children in their beds, we strip countries of their land for our own use, and we kill Americans. Because best country on the planet, right, boys? So, this opens up doorways to say that anyone that doesn't think the same way is a problem. We saw this in the way that Trump recently made some excuse to say that if anyone burned a flag, they can be in prison for up to a full year. Respect your nation or be punished. The First Amendment covers free speech, and one of the aspects of free speech is burning the flag. But let's stop beating around the bush here. What is nationalism? Nationalism is the pride and loyalty to one's national identity. And I don't think anyone would argue that Americans really hold their national identity close to their chests, because they fucking do. I know that I did, and still do. The issue here is that mixing any form of nationality can be a bad thing in the mind of a nationalist. Some things that nationalism can lean on are that the ethnicity and language of the nation are the best. Right now, one of the big things that Trump is targeting is the illegal human. I don't think that anyone is illegal, but I know some people are going to go ahead and listen to me and make a stink if I don't use their new favorite term, when in all honesty, being in America while undocumented has been a civil issue and not a criminal one for a very long time. And in all honesty, is a waste of our fucking time to hunt down the illegal. It's wasting your tax money and mine. And now, before you come at me, there is an issue in this country when it comes to people crossing the border illegally, but it's not the people themselves. People come here to work and they send their money back to where they come from to help out their family. That, in my opinion, isn't really an issue. What is an issue, though, is the people that hire them, that hire the people that come across the border and don't seem to realize that they are part of the issue and they are causing it to keep happening. Add in that the ones that are deemed illegal are putting money into our taxes and to our health care that they themselves can't access. No matter how often your family members tell you that they in fact have more access to these things than you do. Just an FYI, if they don't have a social security, they're not accessing this our health care. So, diving a little deeper into the definition of fascism, fascism likes to go ahead and take 5 steps: disillusionment, legitimacy, right-wing partnership, dominating institutions, and implementation of radical reforms. After World War I, countries like Italy and Germany had high levels of unemployment that allowed Hitler to go ahead and make their own excuses as to why Germany was dealing with the fallout of World War I. Italy had issues with strikes and factory occupations that led to millions being unemployed. When a country has a large portion of its people struggling to go ahead and make a living, that is when people can squeeze in and take disillusionment to a new level as a tool. Remind you of anybody's country? Disillusionment can be directed at things like how politics seem to be failing certain groups of people. Right now, I live in a location that used to be a booming work town. That work left, and the people have a certain mentality about that because they were disillusioned with the government, and they blame the government for why the work left. It helps to explain how enough of America was swept up in following Trump, a convicted felon, thus putting the diaper-wearing ass hat into the presidency. A little side note here: Harris wasn't a great candidate for president, and the Dems, including Biden, failed America in letting President Trump go ahead and get back into office. That's some Uncle Ringo disillusionment for you. Just an FYI, I still don't think that Harris would have been perfect or good. I just don't think that she would have crippled our economy, our farms, cities, and taken away your rights. I just think she would have pushed off what we're going through right now for 4, maybe 8 years. So, from there, we step into the establishment of legitimacy as a political party. Trump's first run as a president created MAGA. Not a one-for-one for our Republican/Democratic parties, but a force to help him move about, similar to Germany's Nazi Party and Italy's Fascist Party. MAGA is unsurprisingly pro-American and anti-everybody else. If you do not fit their mentality of what an American is, they will have issues with you. A major quote: "They are taking my job." As if MAGA and most Americans were going to go ahead and work at a farm, be a maid, and do other jobs that workers from other countries tend to pick up. The day that MAGA and Americans work at farms, they might have an argument there. Trump bolstered his base to storm the Capitol on January 6th, as we all saw. And then in the second presidency, he pardoned them whenever they were arrested. And funny enough, after they were pardoned, a few of them ended up right back in jail shortly afterwards for crimes. So, where do you go when you have a party that can direct and lead? Well, you start gaining power through right wing partnership. Trump in his second go around partnered with millionaires and billionaires, and now I wouldn't quite call them right wing so much as I would call them shitty humans that have collectively made their money off yours and my back prior to joining up with Trump. However, that changed when they used Elon as the face of Trump's new run. The man did a Hitler salute, and no one will ever change my mind on that, as well as he went ahead and bumped up the ADF in Germany, a right wing Nazi political party. Trump also allied himself with a group that created Project 2025, and then he denied that he was attached to that group until just this year. I'm looking at you, Vought. The Proud Boys, Nazi groups, and white supremacists, and several other right wing ultra nationalist groups were bolstered by Trump's second presidency and start to show up while marching across different streets in America. If you don't believe me, you have access to the internet. You can look that shit up. This joining up with groups jumps us into the aspect of using power to dominate institutions. If you were paying attention early on in the year, Elon and his regime and Trump started going ahead and cutting workers from things like the FFA, UNRWA, and and more recently with Trump's attacks on the media, as well as organizations that criticize him for his actions. Trump and his FCC director have also started work on removing media celebrities that talk badly about Trump and those he deems his allies. In Italy, Mussolini's fascist party gained power and scared the country, thinking that they were going to go ahead and cause a civil war. Now, no one would ever want that now, would they? And if you haven't been paying attention, shortly after Kirk was killed, several people went on the internet to call for civil war. Seems unrelated, I guess. When Hitler was in power, he banned his rival political parties and made himself the sole power. There are no reflections of this in America at all. Trump didn't call his opponents and Democrats gnats and people that he hates. He hasn't stacked the Supreme Court against the Democrats, and he hasn't stacked all the political powers against you and me. Some other things, and also while I'm thinking about it, and he's also not afraid of the midterm elections next year. Some other things to note is Trump has been consolidating power where he can. Really, recently, he and Signalgate Pete called every general into one location to try and intimidate them into following anything that these two want. We will see how that plays out. You never realize how much talking takes out of you until you're sitting here talking straight for a total of 13 minutes. It's interesting. On to step 5 of fascism, implementing radical reforms to help bolster their own power. As I brought up a second ago, Trump has been using his seat of authority to go ahead and bring power to him, marking those that stand against him as enemies, letting his people know that anyone that doesn't fit the mold is someone to label as another. We are constantly seeing power creeps by Trump, especially right now that there is a government shutdown. And over time, the longer that Trump stays in office, the more power, the more he and his people will push his agenda to bolster their power. Excuse me. With each radical reform, the noose gets a little tighter. We can see ICE doing disgusting things like shooting and killing someone because they tried to kidnap a human being, and that human being tried to flee or fight back. They make people disappear constantly, and so many other things that are horrible. And for those of you who don't know this, over in Alligator Alcatraz, a fucking shitty name, I don't remember if I mentioned at the beginning of this, had something like 1,200 people, and 2/3 of them have just disappeared. The good news is that they are incompetent, so we can push back against them fairly easily. It's not perfect. It just takes a lot of effort and a lot of power. It also takes people talking about it and staying peaceful. Look, I felt the need to go ahead and talk about this because I was told I don't know what fascism is. If you really think that I don't, then whatever. I can't really go ahead and show you how to use Google, but I can tell you that you can Google fascism pretty fucking easily. You can also go to the nearest library or bookstore and read a book to see if anyone out there has defined fascism. There isn't much I can do to go and change your mind. What I can tell you is this: I will not stop talking about the fact that right now we are watching humans be dehumanized in America. Fascism has been in America for a while, and there is proof of that. It's just been creeping along underneath our noses, and we are just now noticing the dangers of it. Sure, we don't have groups of people going out and dragging large swaths of the country into the streets in the dead of the night, naked, putting them in zip ties to remove them and arrest them and disappear them. Wait a second. Yes, we are. ICE was given the ability to do essentially whatever the fuck they want. MAGA and right-wing groups have killed people and attempted to kill people in escalating ways. To say that America is not dealing with fascism is ignorance at best. Fascism doesn't always look like Nazi salutes or a march on Rome. But sometimes when you actually look, you can see things happening right now that sound like a duck, act like a duck, and goose step all around the fucking country. When racism is accepted by the people, fascism grows. When identifying with a cherry-picked version of Christianity that is mixed with racism, fascism grows. When nationalism grows, so does fascism. Fascism can grow from many different things. When we deny that there is fascism in a fascist regime, it is allowed to grow. So at the end of the day, I would say that fascism is here in America. It has been here for a long time. It gets to stay here when we don't acknowledge it and speak out against it. When we just let it roll over us, it gains power. When a leader ends up in a position of authority, when they are a horrible person who has delusions of grandeur, inability to lead, and are a self-centered piece of shit, we should call them out and work to remove them from the positions of authority before they do irreparable harm to us, our country, and the futures of our children. Oh, and to add to that fascism argument, when the dipshit we call Trump sends troops to states against the governor's orders, against the governor's wishes and the people's wishes, guess what that is? A waste of yours and my taxpayer money while being an attempt to show power and establish fear. Defending Trump is detrimental to every single American out there and the world at large. If you want to defend him, there isn't much I can do about that. But know that you will one day have to go ahead and tell your children and the next generation that you brought about the damages that are being spread throughout this nation. And if you have any women in your life, look them in the eye and tell them that you don't give a fuck about them and you don't want them to have rights, because that's what you are fucking doing. When a group meets enough of these things that I've defined, they become fascists. And before you go, you were a dumb idiot and who are you to define fascism? No, that I went ahead and looked up Merriam-Webster to go ahead and see what their definition was. And I quote, a populist political philosophy, a movement, or a regime, such as that of the fascista, that exalts nation and often race above the individual. That is associated with a centralized autocratic government headed by the dictatorial leader, and that is categorized by severe economic and social regimentation and by forcible suppression of opposition. And then the Council of Foreign Relations Education breaks fascism down into 5 steps that I brought up. Britannica defines fascism as a government system that is led by a dictator having complete power, forcibly suppressing opponents and criticism, regimentary industry, commerce, etc., and emphasizes aggressive nationalism as well as racism. If there's not enough, look it up yourself to figure out what the fuck fascism is. It doesn't matter if your grandpa who lived in Italy during Mussolini says that we aren't living in a fascist nation if the nation meets the definition. It doesn't matter if you feel like what I am saying is wrong when it is the fact of the matter that this is what is being done right now. This is all fascist behavior backed up by racism and white supremacy to erase and destroy the country that so many like myself have sworn to go ahead and protect. Also, anyone that comes in here and espouses that ICE is doing the right thing, know that a recent incident with a woman ended with her being shot by ICE, I think a total of 5 to 7 times, and the fucker told her, "Do something, bitch." It's on his body cam footage, and then he went ahead and filed that she instigated all of it, even though the body footage told a different story. By the way, she's an American. The good news is she's alive. One last thing. Stefan, shithead, tiny person Miller came out and said that Trump has plenary authority before freezing on CNN. That little fucker said that Trump has absolute power. So before anyone tells me that these little baby ass turds don't think that they are fascists, and they aren't fascists, why are they out here saying that Trump has absolute power like as if he's a fucking dictator? Call them what they are and stand up for your country or go the fuck off.
You've called the district judge's ruling blocking the deployment of National Guard in Oregon legal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical issue. We'll try to fix that and get back to you after a quick break. Stay with CNN.
To end this, Epstein files need to be released. Free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan, and make Palestine get an actual ceasefire that isn't broken by the shitty country Israel. Please have a good day. Speak out. Speak up. Defend your countrymen. Defend your neighbors. Defend your family. And stop letting this go on. We are better than this. Have a good day.